There comes a time in every believer's life when the silence becomes heavy, not the silence of peace, but the silence of waiting. You have prayed, cried, and questioned how someone could cause such harm and still walk freely as though heaven were asleep. You have wondered if the narcissist would ever face the weight of their own actions. Yet in this sacred pause, something unseen begins to move. It is not the kind of movement that shakes the earth with noise. It is the movement of the Spirit preparing to reverse the order of things. In Hebrews chapter 11 verse 1, it is written, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." You may not see justice yet, but that does not mean it is not already unfolding. The unseen is where heaven begins its work, quietly, deliberately, and perfectly timed. Before we begin this journey, it is a blessing to know from which part of the world you are watching, and at what hour of the day God has guided you to this message. Truly, it is a joy to witness how the Lord gathers hearts from every corner of the earth, uniting them in one spirit and in one truth. The narcissist thrives on control. They build their power through manipulation, through making you question your worth, your memory, your faith. But the Lord allows a season of endurance not to punish you, but to prepare you. Every tear shed in private becomes a seed in the soil of divine reversal. Every time you chose silence instead of retaliation, the heavens recorded your restraint as righteousness. There is a moment in the spirit realm when the balance begins to shift. The same calm that once felt empty now becomes the sound of spiritual warfare being won. You are no longer the victim of manipulation. You are the witness of a turning tide. In Psalm chapter 37 verse 7, it says, "Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for Him." Do not fret when people succeed in their ways, when they carry out their wicked schemes. Patience is not weakness. Waiting is not defeat. The waiting room of heaven is where destinies are rearranged. The narcissist believes they are untouchable, but even kings who once thought themselves gods have fallen at the whisper of divine justice. What is hidden cannot remain hidden forever, for light is drawn to darkness as truth is drawn to lies. You may feel that your story has been buried under injustice, but what is buried is not lost, it is planted. The seed must disappear before it can break the soil. And soon, that which has been sown in pain will rise in power. The narcissist may continue to mock, to twist the truth, to play innocent before others. But heaven is not deceived. The hour comes when every mask will slip and every hidden motive will stand naked before divine truth. So if your spirit has been weary, if your nights have been filled with questions, know this: the shaking has already begun. The silence is not the absence of action. It is the sound of preparation. Heaven does not rush because what is being prepared is perfect. And when it comes, it will not only expose the false but also elevate the faithful. The spiritual order is shifting quietly and powerfully. What you thought was an ending may in fact be the beginning of divine reversal. The silence you feel tonight is not abandonment, it is strategy. And soon you will understand why heaven had to wait this long. When silence falls, it is rarely empty. It is the pause before revelation, the stillness before the tide turns. Many mistake it for abandonment, but in truth, silence is how heaven speaks when words would be too small. You have been silent for a reason. You could have shouted your pain to the world. You could have exposed every lie and betrayal, yet you chose restraint, and heaven saw it. What looked like weakness to others was actually a declaration of faith. In Exodus chapter 14, verse 14, it says, "The Lord will fight for you." You need only to be still. That stillness is not surrender. It is a weapon forged in patience. There are battles that cannot be fought with words. The narcissist thrives on reaction. Every argument, every emotional outburst becomes their fuel. But when you stop feeding that fire, the flames turn inward. Silence removes their stage. It confuses their script. It exposes the emptiness beneath their control. And as you remain silent, something powerful begins to happen. Heaven takes over the conversation. There is a moment when your silence becomes louder than their manipulation. The narcissist may boast, spreading stories, twisting truth, seeking attention to maintain their illusion of power. But the heavens are not mocked. In Galatians chapter 6, verse 7, it is written, "Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked." A man reaps what he sows. Their harvest is already on its way. Every word spoken against you has been weighed. Every deceitful act has been recorded. Justice is not delayed. It is deliberate. The silence you are walking through is a sacred construction zone. Heaven is building something unseen. You cannot yet see the structure, but soon you will understand why it took this long to prepare. This is why many lose faith during the silence. The mind begins to wander. The heart begins to fear. You wonder if perhaps heaven forgot your name. But the truth is, silence is where trust matures. It is the dark soil that grows the strongest roots. When you stop searching for explanations, peace begins to form like morning mist, slowly, softly, faithfully. Sometimes the silence is not only for your protection, but also for your preparation. The narcissist's downfall must be witnessed not by your bitterness, but by your healing. Heaven is waiting until your heart can observe justice without becoming consumed by vengeance. That is how divine timing works. It aligns righteousness, not rage. So if you feel forgotten, remember this. Heaven has not stopped moving. The pause is not a punishment. It is positioning. When you see nothing, heaven sees everything. When you hear nothing, the spiritual realm is echoing with activity. Angels do not announce themselves when they begin their work. They move in silence, dismantling lies, redirecting paths, and exposing darkness piece by piece. And when heaven finally speaks, it will not whisper. It will roar through circumstances, through exposure, through truth that can no longer be denied. The narcissist who thought they silenced, you will soon face the sound of divine confrontation. So rest in this truth. Your silence is your shield, and your endurance is your victory. You are not losing. You are rising. And the longer heaven remains quiet, the greater the unveiling that is being prepared. The stillness of this season is sacred. The silence is speaking, and soon every hidden word will be answered in full. Because when heaven finally breaks its silence, even the proud will tremble. The web of the narcissist is built carefully, strand by strand, woven from charm, deceit, and manipulation. At first, it looks like beauty. It glimmers under false light. But every thread serves one purpose: control. They lure their victims with praise, promises, and illusions of safety until slowly, freedom is replaced by confusion. But now, something is trembling in that web. The very threads that once held others captive are beginning to unravel. Not through your hands, but through divine intervention. What they built in pride is collapsing under the weight of truth. In Proverbs chapter 26, verse 27, it says, "Whoever digs a pit will fall into it. If someone rolls a stone, it will roll back on them." Every scheme they design to trap you is turning back toward them. Heaven is not cruel, heaven is just. And justice, when it comes, does not arrive with noise or chaos. It arrives in divine symmetry, giving to each what they have sown. You may have noticed subtle changes already. The charm that once drew people in now repels them. The mask that once fooled everyone begins to crack. Their lies start to conflict, their confidence turns to panic. Doors that once opened easily for them now remain shut. The people who once believed their every word begin to sense something wrong, something false, something they cannot explain. That is not coincidence. That is exposure. The web is trembling because truth is shaking its foundations. The narcissist has spent years building their false kingdom, a kingdom of image, control, and performance. But heaven never allows deception to reign forever. When truth rises, even the strongest illusion disintegrates. The narcissist cannot comprehend this shift. They feel the ground moving beneath them, yet they cannot admit it. Their pride blinds them to reality. They scramble to maintain control, to manipulate once more, but their words begin to lose power. Their charm no longer captivates. Their threats no longer intimidate. It is as though their influence is slipping through invisible fingers, and indeed, it is. In Job chapter 5, verse 12. It is written, "He thwarts the plans of the crafty, so that their hands achieve no success." Heaven is dismantling their schemes quietly, piece by piece. And though they may still appear confident outwardly, inside, their own web is closing in on them. The lies they spun now entangle them. The fear they inflicted now hunts them. The manipulation that once served them now exposes them. Do not seek revenge. You need only to watch. The Lord's justice does not need human hands. What was done to you in darkness will now be judged in light. You will not need to prove anything, because heaven will do it for you. This trembling is not just punishment. It is revelation. It is the moment the world begins to see what you saw all along. The narcissist's charm fades. Their mask slips. Their energy grows restless. What once looked like control now looks like desperation. The very web they created to trap others becomes their own snare. So when you see their world begin to shake, do not fear. It is not your world falling apart. It is theirs. You are not losing control. You are watching heaven restore balance. And soon, that trembling will turn into collapse. The web that once held so many will no longer exist, because truth always survives the shaking. There is a law written not by man, but by heaven itself, the law of hidden reaping. No one escapes it, not the proud, not the deceitful, not even the clever, who believe their darkness is invisible. Every seed sown, whether in kindness or cruelty, must return to the one who planted it. It is a law as unchangeable as gravity and as certain as the sunrise. In Galatians chapter 6, verse 7, it is written, "Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows." The narcissist may have built their life around manipulation, thinking their charm could outsmart divine order. For a while, it may even seem that way. They rise, they thrive, they appear untouchable. But heaven keeps record. Nothing sown escapes the soil of eternity. There are words spoken in secret that echo in the spirit realm. Lies whispered in darkness do not vanish. They become living seeds waiting for harvest. Every deception is a seed. Every betrayal, every false promise, every hidden act of cruelty, all are planted in the unseen ground. For a season, they may flourish like weeds, but when the harvest time comes, they bear bitter fruit. The narcissist believes that by staying one step ahead of exposure, they have beaten the system. But time is not their ally. It is their enemy. Heaven allows the narcissist to build higher, not to reward them, but to ensure their fall will reveal everything. The higher the illusion rises, the louder the truth will sound when it collapses. You may wonder why heaven waited so long. The waiting was mercy, mercy for you to heal, and mercy for them to repent. But when mercy is ignored, justice awakens. And when it awakens, nothing can silence it. In Luke chapter 12 verse 3, it says, "What you have said in the dark will be heard in the daylight, and what you have whispered in the ear in inner rooms will be proclaimed from the rooftops." That is not poetic exaggeration. That is divine reality. Hidden reaping happens quietly at first. Opportunities begin to vanish. The people they once manipulated turn distant. Finances that once flowed easily begin to dry up. Their mind becomes restless. Their peace evaporates. They become haunted, not by ghosts, but by the echoes of their own choices. The harvest has begun. You may not witness all of it, but you will feel the shift. The same energy that once oppressed you begins to recoil. You sense the atmosphere changing, a reversal in motion. It is as though heaven has begun to collect its due, returning every unjust weight to its rightful owner. This law works for you too. Every tear, every silent prayer, every act of forgiveness, those were your seeds. You planted them in faith when no one saw, and your harvest will not be stolen. What you lost will return, multiplied and purified. The pain that once broke you will one day testify for you. So let the law of hidden reaping bring you peace, not vengeance. You do not need to chase justice. Justice knows your address. Every lie has an expiration date. Every hidden thing has a revealing hour. The narcissist's harvest is coming due. And heaven never forgets its seasons. And what comes next will not only expose them, it will remove the false covering they once hid behind. There comes a moment when heaven withdraws its covering. It does not happen in anger nor in haste. It happens when grace has been refused too many times, when warnings have been mocked, and when pride has taken the place of humility. The narcissist, once protected by illusion, now stands exposed. In Proverbs chapter 16 verse 18, it says, "Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall." This truth has echoed through every generation. Pride blinds the eyes, deafens the ears, and hardens the heart. The narcissist builds a false throne out of self-importance, believing no power can touch them. But when heaven withdraws its covering, even the strongest image begins to crack. For years, they may have been surrounded by admirers, people drawn in by their charm, their confidence, their supposed strength. Yet those admirers were never truly loyal to them. They were loyal to the illusion. And when the illusion fades, so does their following. This is how heaven works. The false is allowed to exist just long enough to reveal its emptiness. You may begin to see it happening in subtle ways. The narcissist who once commanded attention now finds themselves ignored. The doors that used to open suddenly stay closed. Relationships that once revolved around them begin to drift. Their laughter sounds hollow, their victories feel smaller. They start to sense a coldness around them, a spiritual chill, as though the warmth that once shielded them has vanished. That is not coincidence. That is the withdrawal of grace. Grace protects, but it also exposes. When heaven withdraws its covering, light floods the darkness, and what was hidden begins to rot in open air. The narcissist cannot hide behind appearances anymore. Their words lose persuasion. Their manipulation no longer stirs loyalty. Their power begins to crumble without explanation. It is as if the universe itself has turned against them, but in truth, it is divine order being restored. This moment of exposure is painful to witness, even for those they have harmed. But remember this, exposure is not cruelty. It is mercy in disguise. It is heaven's last attempt to awaken repentance through consequence. The narcissist can no longer play the victim, because their own fruit now testifies against them. In Psalm chapter 37 verse 35 to 36, the psalmist says, "I have seen a wicked and ruthless man flourishing like a luxuriant native tree. But he soon passed away and was no more." The fall of the narcissist often begins quietly. Their confidence turns to confusion, their charm to irritation, their control to desperation. They blame others, they shift stories, they panic in silence. But the truth is simple. Heaven has stepped back. When grace is lifted, everything the narcissist depended on begins to fade. Their influence, their opportunities, their inner peace, all slip away like sand through open fingers. They stand in the very emptiness they once created for others. And this is where the story changes. Because while their covering is withdrawn, yours is being restored. The same divine hand that shields the humble removes its protection from the proud. What once covered deception now reveals truth. What once concealed pain now showcases healing. The withdrawal of heaven's covering is not the end. It is the beginning of exposure, justice, and renewal. And as this exposure unfolds, the world will see what was hidden, and even the narcissist will face the reflection they have long avoided. There is a strange calm that comes before exposure. It feels heavy, almost unnatural, like the air before a storm. Everything seems quiet on the surface, yet deep in the spirit realm, a divine rearrangement is taking place. The narcissist thinks they have survived the worst. They mistake the silence for safety. But in truth, heaven is preparing the unveiling. In Ecclesiastes chapter 3 verse 1, it says, "To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven." Exposure is no different. It has its appointed hour, not too early, not too late, but exactly when it will serve the greatest purpose. That is why heaven moves quietly. Because when truth arrives, it must be undeniable. You may sense this calm yourself. You feel something shifting but cannot explain it. It is not fear. It is not anger. It is an awareness that something divine is in motion. The narcissist begins to lose their grip, not through confrontation, but through quiet reversals. People who once supported them start questioning their stories. Those who once ignored your pain begin to notice inconsistencies. It is subtle, yet unstoppable. This is heaven's way. When God moves, he does not always shout. Sometimes he whispers through patterns, coincidences, and quiet realizations. The narcissist cannot fight what they cannot see. They do not understand that the calm they feel is not peace. It is the stillness before revelation. In Psalm chapter 50 verse 21, it says, These things you have done, and I kept silent. You thought I was exactly like you. But I now arraign you and set my accusations before you. For a long season, heaven allowed the narcissist to continue unchecked. Not because heaven was indifferent, but because the story needed to unfold fully. Now, that season is ending. This calm is not for their comfort. It is for your restoration. It gives you a moment to breathe, to gather strength, and to detach from what once held you captive. You no longer react to their provocations. You no longer chase their approval. That emotional distance is a sign that the spiritual shift is already underway. Meanwhile, heaven arranges the stage of truth. Evidence begins to align. Conversations resurface. The same lies that once silenced you now contradict themselves. And the narcissist, who prided themselves on control, begins to unravel in their own contradictions. The calm is deceptive to them, but sacred to you. It is your moment of stillness before the breakthrough. In this phase, you must remain grounded. Do not rush the process. Do not try to expose them yourself. What heaven begins, heaven will finish. The truth does not need your defense. It has its own voice. Stay still, stay peaceful, stay watchful. The unveiling is not far away. You may even notice that the narcissist grows uneasy. They sense something shifting, though they cannot name it. Their confidence wavers. Their tone changes. They overcompensate with false smiles or sudden aggression. This is not strength. It is fear. Deep down, they feel that their season of deception is closing. The calm before exposure is not the end of the story. It is the pause before divine justice is made visible. And when it arrives, it will come suddenly, cleanly, undeniably. No shouting. No vengeance. Just truth. Hold your peace, because heaven is not finished yet, and in the stillness that follows, the limits of grace will finally be revealed. There comes a time when grace reaches its limit, not because heaven runs out of mercy, but because mercy that is constantly rejected becomes judgment in disguise. The narcissist has been given time to see, time to change, time to repent. But pride blinds the eyes that refuse humility. And now, that time is ending. In Romans chapter 2, verse 4-5. It says, "Do you show contempt for the riches of his kindness, forbearance and patience, not realizing that God's kindness is intended to lead you to repentance? But because of your stubbornness and your unrepentant heart, you are storing up wrath against yourself for the day of God's wrath." Grace is meant to save, not to be mocked. When it is mocked, it transforms into justice. For so long, the narcissist mistook patience for approval. They thought silence meant success. They believed mercy meant permission. But grace is never weakness, it is opportunity. When that opportunity is wasted, heaven closes its hand. What once protected now confronts. What once delayed punishment now delivers it. The narcissist begins to notice a strange shift. Their charm no longer works. Their manipulation feels clumsy. Their control starts slipping through cracks they cannot seal. The people who once defended them begin to see clearly. The support they took for granted fades. Everything that once seemed effortless now requires force. And the harder they try to hold on, the faster it all falls apart. This is the moment when grace turns to consequence. Heaven does not send thunder. It sends clarity. Clarity in hearts, clarity in minds, clarity in situations. Suddenly, truth can no longer be denied. The narcissist finds themselves surrounded not by enemies, but by mirrors. Every lie they told returns to them in reflection. Every deception now exposes their true face. In Proverbs chapter 29 verse 1, it says, "Whoever remains stiff-necked after many rebukes will suddenly be destroyed, without remedy." This destruction is not always physical. It begins with their peace. Their confidence fades. Sleep escapes them. They wake in the night with unease they cannot explain. Their spirit begins to crumble under the weight of their own pride. Grace had been their unseen shield. It covered their wrongs, protected their image, and restrained the consequences. But when grace lifts, reality floods in. The same charm that once brought admiration now breeds distrust. The same cleverness that once deceived now exposes. Their words return void. Their laughter echoes hollow, and you, the one who suffered under their control, begin to see the reversal. The energy shifts. You feel lighter. Your peace returns. You realize that you no longer need to explain or prove anything. What once seemed unfair now makes perfect sense. Heaven was waiting for the right time, so the fall would reveal truth, not vengeance. Do not rejoice in their downfall, but understand it. Grace ends not out of cruelty, but because the story must turn. Heaven cannot allow pride to reign forever. Every soul is offered mercy, but not every soul accepts it. When grace reaches its limit, the door of consequence opens. And once that door opens, it cannot be closed by human hands. The season of exposure is no longer coming. It has begun. And in its next phase, truth will turn the mirror around. There comes a moment when truth turns the mirror around. It does not shout. It does not argue. It simply reveals. And in that revelation, the narcissist sees themselves for the very first time, not the version they project, not the image they protect, but the reflection they have long denied. In John chapter 8 verse 32, it says, "Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. For the humble, truth brings freedom, but for the proud, it brings exposure." The narcissist has built their identity on mirrors that reflect only what they choose to see. They surround themselves with admirers, enablers, and illusions, all designed to affirm their false perfection. But heaven has a mirror that cannot be manipulated. When that divine mirror is placed before them, something begins to break. They see not power, but fear. Not confidence, but emptiness. Their laughter sounds forced. Their words feel hollow. What they once admired in themselves now feels foreign. They are confronted with their own reflection, and it is unbearable. For years, they have projected their own darkness onto others, accusing, blaming, twisting truth to escape responsibility. But now, the energy reverses. Every false accusation returns home. Every distorted story becomes their own exposure. They can no longer run from the truth because it is within them. The lies they used to define others now define them. In Hebrews chapter 4 verse 13, it says, "Nothing in all creation is hidden from God's sight. Everything is uncovered and laid bare before the eyes of Him to whom we must give account." This moment is not only external exposure, it is internal collapse. The narcissist begins to feel the weight of what they have done, though they will never admit it aloud. Their peace is gone. Their reflection torments them. Their inner voice, once filled with pride, becomes their accuser. You, who once bore their projections will begin to notice a reversal. The shame they tried to place on you no longer sticks. The fear they once instilled in you now returns to them. The mirror of truth is doing its work. It reflects not vengeance, but divine justice. It is in this stage that heaven separates illusion from reality. Those who once believed the narcissist's false stories begin to see through them. Their words lose power, their manipulations fall flat. It is as though light has pierced through their performance, exposing the stage, the costume, the script, everything they built to maintain control. But remember, this is not your battle to fight. Do not seek satisfaction in their fall. The mirror that reveals them also refines you. It shows how much you have grown, how far you have come from their shadow. It reminds you that healing is not about watching them crumble, but about standing in truth without fear. In this stage, truth is not cruel. It is cleansing. It purifies both the victim and the deceiver, though each experiences it differently. For one, it brings restoration. For the other, revelation. The narcissist cannot escape their reflection, and you no longer need to carry it. Let truth do what it was sent to do, to free the innocent and expose the false. Stand firm, stay quiet, and let the light finish its work, because once the mirror turns, the next thing to return is consequence, and it always comes full circle. When truth finishes its work, consequence begins its march. Slowly, silently, like footsteps echoing down a long hallway, the past returns to collect its debt. This is not revenge. It is divine order, the rebalancing of what was once twisted, the return of what was unjustly taken. In Galatians chapter 6 verse 7, it says, "Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows." The narcissists spent years sowing chaos, deception, and pain, believing they could outrun accountability. But no seed stays buried forever. Sooner or later, the ground gives birth to what was planted. The harvest begins subtly. People who once believed in their charm begin to distance themselves. Opportunities start slipping away. Doors that once opened easily now stay closed. The same manipulation that once worked without effort now draws suspicion. Conversations turn cold. Eyes no longer sparkle with admiration. Their stage grows empty. At first, they blame others. They call it jealousy, betrayal, or bad luck. But deep down, they feel something different, the weight of spiritual consequence. They sense a shift in the atmosphere. What used to bring them power now feels poisoned. The lies they told start circling back, told by others who learned from their example. The empire of illusion begins to crumble from within. In Proverbs chapter 26 verse 27, it warns, "Whoever digs a pit will fall into it. If someone rolls a stone, it will roll back on them." That stone they rolled toward you through gossip, control, or manipulation now rolls back toward their own life. The pit they dug for others becomes their own descent. Meanwhile, those who suffered under their deceit start to rise. Their voices grow stronger, their peace more visible. And that visibility pierces the narcissist like a mirror held to their loss. They see you walking in grace while they stumble in confusion. The light that once irritated them now terrifies them, because it exposes the emptiness they tried to hide. But consequence is not always dramatic. Sometimes it comes through silence, unanswered calls, forgotten invitations, fading attention. To a narcissist, that silence is unbearable. They crave reaction, admiration, control. Without it, their false identity begins to decay. They chase new sources of validation but find none that last. Every attempt feels emptier than before. In this season, you are not called to celebrate their downfall. You are called to stay steady. Keep your peace sacred. Keep your boundaries firm. Consequence is heaven's work, not yours. The Lord repays in His time with precision and justice far beyond human understanding. What matters now is your preparation. While they face exposure, you are being positioned for elevation. The same process that humbles them refines you. You learn to trust again, to love without fear, to walk in truth without needing revenge. That is the true victory, not watching them fall, but watching yourself heal. The narcissist's consequence will not always be public, but it will always be personal. They will experience the same isolation they once caused. They will feel the same confusion they once created. The universe, under divine order, ensures that the lesson fits the deed. So do not be disheartened if you never witness their punishment. Know that justice is already unfolding, quietly, perfectly. Every lie exposed, every heart restored, every wound healed, all are part of the balance being restored. Because once consequence has done its work, something even more mysterious begins, the reversal of power. There is a sacred moment when the scales begin to shift, when the very energy that once drained you now strengthens you. This is the season of reversal. The hands that once pushed you down can no longer reach you. The words that once wounded you now have no weight. The same storm that was meant to destroy you becomes the wind that lifts you higher. In Isaiah chapter 61 verse 7, it says, "Instead of your shame, you will receive a double portion, and instead of disgrace, you will rejoice in your inheritance." The divine exchange begins here. Everything the narcissist tried to steal, your confidence, your peace, your purpose, begins to return multiplied. You do not chase it. It finds you. For so long, the narcissist seemed untouchable. Their charm, their control, their influence, it all looked unshakable. But slowly, heaven begins to reverse the flow. The attention they craved drifts toward you. The respect they demanded is now naturally drawn to your quiet strength. People who once doubted you begin to see your truth without you saying a word. You are no longer the one who explains. You are the one who simply lives, and your peace speaks louder than their performance ever could. This reversal is not just external. It is deeply spiritual. The energy you once poured into surviving now fuels your growth. Your prayers become sharper, your discernment clearer. The anxiety that once kept you awake is replaced by calm assurance. The pain that used to break you now builds endurance. What they meant for harm, heaven turns into preparation. In Romans chapter 8 verse 28, it says, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him." That includes the betrayal, the confusion, the loneliness. None of it was wasted. The narcissist's actions became tools in your transformation, unwilling servants to your destiny. Every tear became a seed, and now the harvest begins. You begin to notice that things flow differently around you. Situations that once brought conflict now bring clarity. The same traits they mocked, your sensitivity, your empathy, your honesty, become the very traits that draw blessings. People trust you without effort because your spirit carries authenticity. You no longer chase connection. Connection finds you. As your light rises, the narcissist feels the shift. It confuses them. They sense their influence slipping but cannot explain why. They may attempt to re-enter your life, masked as humility or regret, but their motives remain unchanged. Do not be deceived by temporary kindness. It is often a test of your boundaries. Reversal is not an invitation to reopen old doors. It is a call to build new ones. During this season, humility must be your shield. The Lord restores you not to boast, but to bless. What was taken from you becomes a tool to help others heal. You learn that real strength is quiet, that victory does not require applause. The more you walk in truth, the more heaven expands your territory. The narcissist, meanwhile, stands bewildered. Their manipulation no longer holds power. Their charm fades. The spotlight turns away. They begin to experience the emptiness they once projected onto others. The mask slips, and without it, they find no peace. And as this divine reversal completes its circle, a deeper mystery begins to unfold, not about them, but about you. For what happens next is not just freedom from the narcissist's control. It is the birth of your divine identity. Freedom is not only the absence of control, it is the discovery of who you were before the control began. For a long time, the narcissist made you question your worth, your memory, even your sense of reality. They twisted your strengths into weaknesses, made your empathy feel like a curse, and taught you to doubt your own spirit. But now, that fog is lifting. What emerges is something sacred, your true self. Purified by fire. In 2 Corinthians chapter 3 verse 17. It says, "Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom." That freedom is not loud or dramatic. It is quiet, steady, like morning light after a long night. It does not need to prove itself, because it already knows who it is. At first, the silence might feel strange. After living in constant defense, peace can almost feel uncomfortable. You might find yourself waiting for another attack, another manipulation, another moment of guilt. But slowly, your nervous system begins to heal. You realize that safety no longer feels like walking on eggshells. It feels like being able to breathe again. Your thoughts become your own. Your emotions stop apologizing for existing. The simple things return: laughter that feels real, rest that feels deep, prayer that feels alive. You start remembering the parts of yourself that were buried under fear: your creativity, your warmth, your ability to trust. Each one returns like a long-lost friend, waiting patiently for you to come home. In this new space, you learn the difference between power and control. The narcissist sought control because they lacked power. But true power flows from peace, not manipulation. It is calm, steady, grounded in truth. When you walk in that power, you no longer need validation. You no longer chase approval. You become anchored in something higher, in the quiet confidence of knowing who you are in the eyes of heaven. In Ephesians chapter 2 verse 10, it reminds us, "For we are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works." You were not created to be someone's emotional supply. You were created to reflect light, to bring love where there was manipulation, and to rebuild what others tried to destroy. Every wound you endured is now becoming wisdom. Every scar becomes a story of resilience that others will draw strength from. But freedom also comes with responsibility to guard what you have gained. Do not allow old patterns to return disguised as new people. Test every spirit, as written in 1 John chapter 4 verse 1. Real love will never require you to shrink. Real peace will never demand your silence. The people sent by heaven will protect your peace, not challenge it. And as you grow stronger, the narcissist may still try to provoke reaction. They may attempt to rewrite history, to pull you back into confusion. But their power over you is broken. You no longer respond from fear, but from wisdom. You no longer explain your worth, because it no longer needs to be proven. Freedom means remembering that your story was never about their destruction. It was about your restoration. You were not called to fight for attention, but to live in truth. You were not meant to walk in bitterness, but in clarity. Every step you take in peace is a step further away from the web they once spun around you. This is what heaven means by deliverance, not just escape, but transformation. You are no longer the same person who entered the storm. You are lighter, wiser, more discerning. You have learned that survival is not the goal, rebirth is. And with that rebirth, something beautiful begins to rise, something the narcissist could never take, imitate, or destroy. Rebirth always comes quietly. It does not arrive with thunder or applause, but with stillness, like a sunrise that paints the world gold without demanding attention. This is where your healing becomes visible, not through words, but through the peace that radiates from your presence. The same eyes that once looked down on you will now wonder how you glow without bitterness, how you smile without pretending, how you love without fear. In Isaiah chapter 43 verse 19, it says, "See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it?" That new thing is not just a change in your circumstances, it is a change in your spirit. You begin to see life differently. The people you once chased now seem distant. The approval you once craved feels unnecessary. You stop explaining your value and start living it. The narcissist's voice, once so loud in your mind, fades into background noise. Their criticisms, once piercing, now sound hollow. The emotional hooks they use no longer find a place to land. It is not that they stopped trying, it is that you stopped reacting. You have learned that silence is not weakness, it is mastery. You do not need to fight every lie. Truth defends itself. This new version of you walks lighter. You begin to set new boundaries, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. You learn to say no without guilt and yes without hesitation. The strength that once felt like survival now feels like peace. You no longer carry the need to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding you. You release the need for closure from those who never gave you honesty. In Philippians chapter 4 verse 7, it says, "And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds." That is what you are feeling now, peace that does not make logical sense. After all that was done to you, after all the betrayal, how can peace still come? But it does, because peace is not a reward for perfection. It is a gift for surrender. This stage of your rebirth is where gratitude returns. You start to see beauty in the small things again, the way the morning light hits the window, the sound of your own laughter, the softness of prayer at night. The pain that once defined you becomes a distant teacher, no longer a constant companion. You stop seeing yourself as a victim and begin to see yourself as chosen, not because of what you endured, but because of how you endured it. Even forgiveness begins to bloom, not as permission for their behavior, but as release for your soul. You understand that forgiveness does not mean reconciliation. It means freedom. You let go not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. You realize that holding on to anger only binds you to what God has already released you from. The narcissist, meanwhile, feels this shift. They sense the distance, the detachment, the loss of control. They may reach out again, through words, memories, or false remorse, but you will recognize it for what it is: desperation, not repentance. You have learned to see beyond their charm, to discern the spirit behind the smile, and this time, when you walk away, you will not do so in pain. You will walk away in purpose. You will not need to explain, justify, or apologize. The old version of you was created for survival. The new version of you is created for peace. And as your soul settles into this freedom, something divine begins to whisper, a reminder that your story is not ending here. It is only now beginning to unfold into its true purpose. Purpose begins to rise like dawn after a long night. It does not come with noise or confusion, but with a quiet knowing deep in your spirit, a certainty that everything you walked through was preparing you for something greater. The pain, the loss, the isolation, none of it was wasted. Every wound became a doorway. Every tear watered the ground where new life now grows. In Romans chapter 8 verse 18, it says, "The sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us." That glory is not about status or recognition. It is the peace that radiates from a heart refined by endurance. It is the wisdom that comes from learning what cannot be taken, your worth, your faith, your identity. You begin to sense that your story has purpose beyond your own healing. The lessons you learned are not meant to stay hidden. They are meant to guide others still trapped in the same cycle you escaped. The empathy that once made you a target now makes you a healer. The same depth of feeling that drew in manipulation now draws in restoration. You have become a vessel of compassion, not because you were spared from pain, but because you survived it with grace. In 2 Corinthians chapter 1 verse 4, it says that God comforts us in all our troubles so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from Him. That is your calling now, not to revisit the past, but to redeem it, to use your story as light for someone else's darkness. The narcissist tried to silence your voice, but heaven preserved it. They tried to rewrite your truth, but truth cannot be erased. Now, your voice carries power, not through anger, but through testimony. You can speak without bitterness, remember without pain, and love without fear. That is what true victory looks like. Your relationships begin to change too. You attract people who value peace more than performance. You draw near to those who listen without judgment, who walk in kindness without agenda. Slowly, your circle becomes smaller but stronger. The noise fades and clarity grows. You also start to understand why certain doors had to close. Rejection becomes protection in hindsight. The connections that broke were never meant to sustain your purpose. The paths that ended were simply redirections toward something better. Nothing was lost. It was all rearranged for your growth. In this season, gratitude deepens into reverence. You begin to thank heaven not just for the blessings, but for the battles. You start to see that what looked like delay was actually preparation. The isolation that once felt unbearable was where your discernment was sharpened. The silence that once scared you became the womb of wisdom. The narcissist's shadow no longer lingers over you. Their chapter is closed, sealed, and distant. The lessons remain, but the pain no longer defines them. What once felt like an ending now feels like a beginning, a sacred invitation to step into your divine assignment. In Isaiah chapter 61 verse 3, it says, "You will receive a crown of beauty for ashes, joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of despair." That is the exchange unfolding in your life now. The ashes of your suffering are turning into soil for new joy, and as this purpose unfolds, you begin to feel something unfamiliar yet profound, joy that does not depend on circumstance, hope that does not fade with time, and love that is rooted in eternity. But there is still one more step to complete the healing, the step of surrender. Surrender is not defeat. It is release, the moment when you stop trying to make sense of everything and simply let heaven hold what your hands can no longer carry. It is the quiet end of striving, the gentle beginning of peace. For so long, you fought to understand the narcissist's actions, to fix what was broken, to earn what was freely given. But now, you begin to see that some things are not meant to be figured out. They are meant to be handed over. In Matthew chapter 11 verse 28, it says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." That is the invitation, not to run harder, but to rest deeper. Surrender does not mean giving up on your story. It means trusting that your story is already being written by a wiser hand. As you let go, the weight begins to lift. The thoughts that once consumed your nights grow quiet. The pain that once echoed in your chest becomes distant. You stop replaying conversations, stop searching for answers that never come. You begin to feel something softer, lighter, the peace that comes from trusting divine timing. In this surrender, you realize that justice and healing do not always arrive in the same season. The narcissist may face their lessons long after you have moved on. You do not need to witness it. You only need to know that divine balance is already in motion. Your task is no longer to watch, but to walk forward, free and faithful. In Psalm chapter 37 verse 7, it says, "Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him." Do not fret when people succeed in their ways. The stillness described here is not inactivity. It is alignment. It means you no longer move from fear or anxiety, but from trust. You know that every delay has purpose, that every unanswered question holds wisdom, that every closed door is protection. Surrender also means forgiving yourself for staying too long, for believing too deeply, for not seeing the truth sooner. But understand this, grace has already covered what guilt tries to accuse. You did the best you could with the knowledge you had. Now, with new clarity, you move differently. You speak boundaries without fear. You give love without losing yourself. In this stillness, you begin to see how much heaven has rearranged within you. You no longer react to provocation. You respond with peace. You no longer chase closure. You embody it. You no longer beg for love. You become it. The very things that once made you vulnerable now make you powerful. Surrender also opens space for renewal. Ideas begin to flow again. Creativity awakens. Dreams that were buried under pain start to rise. The vision for your future becomes clearer. You begin to sense that something holy is unfolding, not in chaos, but in calm, and somewhere far from the noise of the past. You feel the gentle presence of peace settling in like evening light. You understand that the battle is over, not because you won in the way you imagined, but because you no longer need to fight. The war within has been silenced by truth. This is not the end of your story. It is the sacred pause before the next beginning, where the lessons you've learned become the foundation for everything yet to come. Because after surrender, there is always renewal, a divine promise waiting just beyond the horizon. Renewal does not arrive all at once. It unfolds gently, like the first light after rain, touching every place that once felt barren. This is where the story turns from survival to purpose, from pain to peace. You are no longer defined by what broke you, but by what rebuilt you. The past no longer owns your voice. It now serves your wisdom. In Revelation chapter 21 verse 5, it says, "Behold, I make all things new." Those words are not only a promise for the world to come. They are also a whisper to your present, a reminder that renewal begins inside you long before it shows outside. The heart that once carried sorrow now beats with gratitude. The soul that once trembled in fear now stands in quiet strength. The eyes that once looked backward now gaze toward hope. You begin to see your journey not as wasted years, but as sacred preparation. The storm did not destroy you. It refined you. The betrayal did not define you. It revealed you. What the narcissist meant for your downfall became the very soil where your resilience grew. And in that soil, something holy has taken root, a deep, unshakable peace that no deception can touch. In Psalm chapter 126 verse 5, it says, "Those who sow with tears will reap with songs of joy." You are entering that harvest now. The tears that once watered your pain are bringing forth joy, wisdom, and new beginnings. You no longer walk in survival mode. You walk in grace. The lessons you carry are not chains, they are wings. Renewal is not about erasing the past. It is about seeing it through healed eyes. You remember the darkness without reliving it. You honor your scars without shame. You look back only to thank heaven for bringing you through what others thought would destroy you. Each memory becomes proof that grace is real and restoration possible. As this chapter of your life closes, peace becomes your constant companion. You begin to enjoy the quiet again, not the silence of fear, but the silence of freedom. You wake up without anxiety. You sleep without replaying the pain. You pray, not out of desperation, but out of communion. The spirit within you is calm, steady, whole. The narcissist's voice fades into the distance, powerless against the clarity you now carry. Their image no longer lives rent-free in your thoughts. Their presence no longer dictates your emotions. They remain in the past, a teacher you no longer need, a lesson already learned. And in their absence, you discover what was always waiting, joy that feels safe, love that feels pure, and faith that feels alive. The journey through pain was never about the narcissist. It was always about the unveiling of your true identity, the awakening of your purpose, and the restoration of your peace. You are now walking in that purpose, free, wise, and anchored in truth. You have learned that endings are not losses. They are doorways. And beyond this doorway lies a life filled with light, clarity, and divine promise. So, as this message closes, let your heart rest. The storm has passed. The lesson is complete. The healing has taken root. And what lies ahead is not uncertainty, but renewal, steady, unfolding, and eternal. You have walked through fire and emerged gold. You have faced darkness and become light. You have let go of control and found peace. This is your rebirth. This is your restoration. This is your renewal.